Women have the power to transform this world. We can end crime and violence if we all agree to do one thing: share. Let's share our wisdom, share our time, share our talents, share our finances, but most of all, let's share our love. This is the Female Solution.
This is the Female Solution. I love how Sister Naima says that. And welcome. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Master Force with Shemsu-t. We are doing a series called Level Up, and this is the second edition of that series. So thank you for being here. I know that you can choose to be any place else, and if you're listening to the replay, I thank you for doing that too. I also would like to invite you, if you're listening on YouTube, to subscribe, comment, share, let other people know. I'm learning how to actually request that people support what I'm up to. I tend to actually just do the work, but I'm now asking you to make my work a part of your community, a part of your learning strategy. And this week, we're going to be talking about Mommy Teaches the Young Ninja. So we're moving into the family aspect of the curriculum. If you missed last week, I want you to, I invite you to go back and look at the curriculum because it's about letting your wealth flow and opening your money blocks. Many of us tend to get into the hustle. And when we're in the hustle, we don't necessarily do the work to make ourselves available to receive. Most of our time we're shut down, and even if people give us ideas, we push them away because we're not open to receiving. So I go back and look at that, and we've created an app around the book, Let Your Wealth Flow. And the book is called wealthmaster.group. That's the app. So if you type it into your actual browser, you'll see the app come up. You can actually buy the book from the app, but you can also interact with that app and do some of the work on there because I don't want you to purchase the book if you're not going to do the work. And then if you do decide to purchase either the soft cover or the ebook, you can type in the discount code, which is a wealth flow. If you put in wealth flow, you'll be able to get $5 off either the ebook or the paperback. Okay, wonderful. So now let's talk about Mommy Teaches the Young Ninja. Now, this is a children's book and it's geared towards 4 to 10-year-olds, and it's really supporting mothers to do curriculum with their children at home. The reason that we've created it like this is because many of us know that mothers are our first teachers, and even fathers now are our first teachers. So we want to support parents who are looking for new ways of reaching their children and giving them inner strength. This is that series. We've also created a website called Mommy Teaches the Young Ninja, and we've put on that website a curriculum for both parents and teachers so that they can walk their children through this work and even use it in the classroom, right? So if you have a chance, take a look at that. Not if you have a chance. I'm actually appealing to you. Our children need this work. Okay, it is so important for them to learn how to understand their power on the inside. We've left our children very vulnerable right now, and they're really caught up in the matrix because many of us have not developed the capacity to teach spiritual awareness, and that is where this work comes in. So now, why does this series matter? because children need practical language for managing feelings, fear, stress, and change. Now, I actually created this work over 25 years ago when I was homeschooling my youngest son, Zakur. And part of the curriculum, once we completed the math, the science, and the reading, I actually put in a a playtime where we were learning breathing and hygiene and some of those things. So part of the work to distinguish that from the academia, we actually put on our gi, we would put on our karate suits, and we would sit down and meditate. And then after I did this work with him, the idea came, why don't you create this series, so that other parents can actually introduce that to their children. So I began writing that book, but I never could find an illustrator. Nobody was really interested. It's so interesting when I look at how, I start things and nobody's ready for it. But here we are 25 years later, and people, not only are they ready for it, but it's required. It's required learning. So when we started developing the series over last summer, we actually did put it out inside of the Master Force Press. So I'll talk more about that later. But parents need simple tools to open meaningful conversations at home about these subjects. Teachers need engaging resources as well. So this series is to support both the parents and the teachers so that they can use these imaginative stories to work with their young people and help them to gauge the power that is within them, the power that is inside, right? And many of us, and I believe also as the parents work on this, they will also begin to develop increase their capacity as well. Okay. So now we have 6 core titles, right? And in the site and in the website, you'll be able to find all of them. And again, the website is www.mommyteachestheyoungninja.com or mommyteachesyoungninja.com. Take the out. Mommy Teaches Young Ninja. And so you can learn emotional intelligence and resilience just listening to the stories. So, how do we teach inner strength before the world has to teach it to them? We are losing so many of our children because they don't understand how powerful they are. Our children are extremely powerful. And we have to be able to let them tap into that power before they misuse it or become misunderstood because of it. All right. So give your children the opportunity to learn some things, and I'm sure you've probably already been teaching some of this, so it would just add to the things that you are teaching. So let's actually look at the different components. So we're teaching about breathing. Now, a lot of these concepts do come from, I have the Master Force International Leadership Academy, and we do teach these core concepts in many of our courses. I started understanding the importance of people learning how to breathe and calm themselves down when that fire happened at E2 many years ago. I watched on television how people were having heart attacks away from the drama because they could not calm themselves. And I knew then that that needed to be part of the curriculum that I was teaching. And when we're teaching our courses, we actually have our coaches, there's components that we call it the portable curriculum. So teaching breathe to center is one of the most important and one of the first components that we teach, because when you can actually tap into your breath and still yourself, relax yourself, you will be able to have thoughts that come to you. You will be able to tune into your intuition. You will be able to lower your blood pressure. Can you imagine that in the height of a dramatic situation, that your breath will teach you how, will actually calm it down, not teach you. Now, if you do it long enough, it will become second nature. And that's what we would like to start teaching our children, how to go into their breath so that they can calm down. And then, of course, there is the next one. The second series is meditation. Meditation, again, is where we want to be able to have our children know that they can go into their mind and find stillness, where they can go into their mind and connect, right, with source, with God, with whatever you call that connection in your belief system. We want to teach our children how to tap into that. I know one of the most amazing things my mother gave me before she was put in a mental institution when I was 5, she taught me how to pray. She prayed with us every night, before we went to bed. You're the Our Father who art in heaven, right? And mommy laid me down to sleep. You all know all of those. But the other thing is, there was a parent that she would leave us with in the morning, that would send us off to school. And Miss Young had 3 of her own children. So my sister and I would join Miss Young and her children for prayer before we went to school, and then we would all walk to school together. But this woman would pray over us every day before we went to school, and then on Fridays she had a Bible study in her home, and in that Bible study she taught us how to seek truth. So these are ways that I learned how to introduce meditation into my life, because when my mother got sick, I had to find a way to tune into that source that she had introduced me to. And meditation was the way to do it. I don't know if any of you remember on public television, PBS, there was Lilia's Yoga in You. And at 14, I literally started sitting down, watching her. And especially, I went to Diet Middle School. And at Diet Middle School, we had school all year round. So we went to school for 14 days and we were off school for 15 days. And during those 15 days, I did a lot of yoga and meditation. And that's what got me really strong inside of the importance of it. I didn't know how much that was going to sustain me because of some of the other challenges that I would later face. But I really invite you to introduce meditation, a meditation practice with your children, with your family on a regular basis, so that they can understand that they are not alone. Even if parents aren't there, God is with them. The universe is with them. They are being sustained, but they have to know how to tap into that. And meditation is one of those ways of doing it. And then one of the books also is called, the topics is Affirm, affirmations. Affirmations are used in so many different ways. I used to hear my family use this affirmation to the young men before my sons came along. They would say to them, you better watch yourself. You're going to get shot out there. That's an affirmation. That's an affirmation. Okay. So a lot of times we're planting negative seeds into the minds of our children and wondering why they end up hurt. We literally are planting negative seeds. So even when you say be careful, it's almost insinuating there's a fear that they have to be weary of. And so when you're being subtle and you're thinking you're teaching them something, that's not a powerful way of having them to be raised. Right. And so in this series, we're teaching how to use affirmations to tap into the inner strength, tap in to know that you have the power to be who you are. And it's okay for you to be a powerful being on this planet. It's okay for you to shine. That's what you're put here for. And as much as the world does not want to see that's who we are, it's okay for us to still do that. So affirm is one of the ones that we actually push. And then when we talk about visualization, this is probably my all-time favorite. And if you've listened to this show even once, you've heard me talk about The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, and how I learned that visualization was directly tied to every cell in my body, and how I've used that my entire life to heal, to help others heal, to actually be able to go to school without having money, to actually be able to do anything. I've traveled the world, I've created businesses, I've sustained and did so many things where people would sit back and say, oh, as soon as I get the money, I'm going to do this. But you can actually tap into the currency of visualization, because when you put a thought in your mind, it cannot distinguish between the past, the future, or now. And that's why Eckhart Tolle in his book, he talks about the power of now, because really where you're going to focus is inside of this moment. And from this moment is where you're going to create. So visualization gives you access to that creative power. Now, the best times to visualize are in the morning when you wake up, because you're actually in a trance state. You're actually in a theta rhythm, so that your body is not quite conscious yet and your subconscious is still pretty prevalent. Otherwise, our conscious mind is always checking things to see if they're true or false. And usually if it's false, we can't, you say I'm rich, your mind says, oh no, you're not. So you want to put that in your mind when it's less active. And then the other time is right before you go to sleep. I remember, sometimes when I'm going through a challenging times, I'll create a memo on my phone where I will create my affirmations, so that the affirmations are playing while I visualize, and that's how I go into my sleep. In even if you want to solve a problem by the next day, and these are your problems, because you can't solve other people's problems. Other people must do their own work. We actually have one of our principles, no rescuing, because each one of us have the ability to tap into God, tap into the universe, tap into source energy. We each have that ability. And so if we can be the example of that, more people can do that. But if you keep trying to save people, then you're interrupting their work, and you're also blocking your blessings, because you're focusing on something that is none of your business, so to speak. Okay, so visualize is one of the things that we actually look at inside of that. And so here are the titles. Breathing is a superpower. Now, breathing is a superpower talks about Ty, who's very upset because his sister has affected one of his toys. I think his sister knocked his toy down, and he is so mad. And his mother teaches him how to breathe. Okay. And then the next one is meditation made easy. Now, Ty is actually throughout this entire book. And I wrote this series 25 years ago, and it was very interesting that that's the name that came up to me. And so these are the 7 books in the series right now. Uh, Meditation Made Easy, no, it should be meditations made easy. Then affirmations are fun, visualizations are fun, relax and trust. The brightest star is about death and dying. And why is death and dying so important in our community? Death and dying is so important in our community because it's one of our triggers. It makes us start protests and riots. And if we're protesting and rioting, we're usually destroying. We're not building. And this is where the distraction comes into our community, where we destroy ourselves. And we've been taught to do that. It's a program. So death is being used as a program to actually keep us in a very frustrated state of mind, and to keep us impoverished, even to keep us starting over again and again and again. See, they did that to us, by destroying our communities, similar to what they did in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But now they're using that same method to get us to do it also. You can see how the energy and the heat is raising up right now along all the different issues, oh, excuse me, of our young men being assassinated. But that's because they want to take us off track. This year alone is a year for us to actually accumulate great wealth. But most of us cannot receive because we are angry. We are so angry, and we want to. You heard a lawyer say the other day, we have to protest it. These are all trigger words. It's triggers to take us outside of what we need to focus on. And what we need to focus on are ourselves, our families, and our communities. And I'm not saying we don't need to actually have a voice inside of what's happening, but we want to make sure that we're not being fed into an action that is riotous and destructive to our own community, because that has been what has happened in the past. Okay, so the brightest star talks about death and dying, and it talks about death not being the end of life. That we can literally access people better when they leave here because they're not confined to these bodies. Many religions and many cultures, especially in a Mexican culture, they teach their children about the importance of having their ancestors available to them on a daily basis. And these are some of the things that we want to make sure that we get back into, so that our children have the opportunity to develop themselves. Okay? And if we can actually do that, imagine a world where someone can die, but instead of us feeling so hurt by it and grieving so much that it takes us out of our jobs, suppose that we can actually release them in a celebration of life giving energy, where we can welcome them back into our space as spirit beings, as people that are able to participate with us, right? And be present to us. So, teaching our children about death and dying is very necessary. I remember in my own life, when I was 10, and my favorite cousin, Jimmy, he was actually murdered, shot in the head. And going to the funeral was very devastating, but no one in the family talked to me about it. So when I sat on that front row and watched him in that casket, I had no idea what I was experiencing. But for years, I had so much resentment about him being put in that casket and it being lowered, shut down and then lowered into the ground. And I had no idea how to access that. But then one time I was with my friend in Puerto Rico, Teresa Lugo, and she said, and a guy came up to her and spoke in Spanish, and she said, "Who is that tall guy that walks behind her? Do you see that guy that walks behind her? And she's not wearing any amulet. She's not wearing any jewelry. Who does she worship that this guy is walking behind her?" And Teresa came to me and she told me what the guy said. And I said, "Oh," I said, "that's the spirit of my cousin Jimmy." I said, he has been with me my entire life since he left here. And he's always with me. So that's the kind of energy that we want our children to recognize, so that they're not out here trying to fight battles that they can barely win on their own. We want to give them the ability to know that we live in a world that is very magical. That's what the simple life gives us, a magical world, instead of chasing how much money. You ever notice that people equate you on how much money you have instead of seeing that wealth is also knowledge, wealth is also joy, wealth is also a beautiful friendships and relationships with people, with your friends and family. Travel is a form of wealth, but we've been told that how much money you have makes you more valuable than someone else. So a person with $1 trillion is far more valuable than someone who has the gift to share knowledge with others. And that's just not true. And we want to make sure that we're not putting that into our children's heads, that your worth is based on how much money you have, because their worth is really just based on who they are in the character that they develop. Because right now, if you have children that are taught to steal and take things from other people, that very act itself is telling the universe, I don't trust that you will provide. If you have to steal, you are telling the universe, I don't trust that you will give me what I need. So we want to make sure that we're giving corrective answers to our children. And then the last book is Back to School. It's a back to school. It's Ty's big adventure. And it's tied looking at, oh my goodness, now I'm going to a new grade. And you know how children feel about, well, I don't know. Do you remember yourself how you feel about going to the third grade or fourth grade or whatever? It was exciting, but it was also scary because you didn't know who was going to be in the class. You didn't know who the teacher was. So this is a nice book to have to share with your children, to get them prepared for the school year, where they can actually talk about the anxiety that they may be feeling. Okay, so that's very important, to have our children be able to say what they're feeling inside. Can you identify your own anxieties? I mean, most of us don't even know how to have the words for it. Let me see, I have a comment here. So glad to see you're teaching on transition and how to prepare for it. That's right. Thank you. My guest on Monday Morning Mindfulness returns for part 2 on hospice and listening and dying. Yes, indeed. That is so important. At Masterforce, we actually do a certification class in death doulas. And we started that in 2020 because so many people were checking out because of COVID. And then people were dying without their family present. So we wanted to show people how they can actually support people in spirit or across Zoom, if they were having to work with them. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you that you're also talking about this topic, because death can be a very beautiful experience. I've worked with Dr. Hoppy with a few of people that I knew that were transitioning, and we would put up white sheets around the room, and then make sure that we had candles and a very soft environment, and then invited the family to come in and sit around and share their goodbyes or share their stories, and it was a very, even when my mother died, she died from lung cancer. I believe it was in 2005. And she actually, we sat around the hospital and we ordered food, and everybody was there sitting around talking and laughing. And we were laughing at her because she's in this oxygen tank trying to make somebody give her a cigarette. And people like, you can't even smoke a cigarette. So, but her last days were spent with us being there, and really sharing her life stories with everyone else. So thank you, and thank you for saying that. So we're going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, we will talk more about this series. So let us tap in. And yeah, if you need to go and get you some coffee, I know I need to take a swig of mine. I'll be right back.
Have you seen all the solar farms popping up everywhere? You know, the big fields with the solar panels. There's one in our community. They produce electricity using the clean energy of the sun to send to the power grid to reduce our energy costs. Because not everybody can get solar panels put on their roof the way I have, but everybody can enroll for free to share the energy produced by the solar farms. That's why they were built. You know you're supposed to be getting a 10 to 20% savings on your bill for that, right? Illinois has a goal to transition by 2050 to 100% clean energy. So everybody needs to be connected. People in other communities are already getting their savings. So I'll be by to see you because they want to make sure you get your savings as well. It just takes a few minutes. I'm Naima Latif. Call me if you have any questions. 312-849-3456.
Yes, so you guys be sure that you call Naima Latif and make sure that you're able to actually get in on learning about this information. And again, we tend to be the last ones to actually get on board with what's happening, right? So let's get on board with what's happening now and allow ourselves to tap in. Now, this is actually the website that we created to go along with the actual books. Okay, and the reason that I love this website, again, you have my cute little guide there, reading a book. And then here you can buy the book or you can learn. So there's different ways for people to move through it. Now, I want you to know that we actually do have a lot of information on this website, and you can go to each of the books, and it again it taps into where you can purchase the books. And we have here, breathing is a superpower. Not only do we have the book, but we also have an activity book so that children and parents can work through some of the activities on a regular basis, because children like to have achievement, right? So we give them the option to do that. Now, if you look up here, we also have for parents and teachers. So for parents, we have a different set of actual blogs that they can look at. The blogs are important because sometimes as parents, we don't realize that we're actually moving the information that that we learned from our childhood. We're just passing it on without examining it and making sure that we're checking ourselves, right? So here, this one is called 10 Ways to Unbully Your Child. And it's giving parents an idea of how some of the things may be affecting their child's life. So it's just another way of getting, another concept. You- And I don't know. When I grew up, one of the things that was so adamant in our childhood was don't talk about what's happening in the house. Don't you tell people our business. So nobody talked about what was happening. So you thought that what was going on in your house was the same thing that was going on in everyone else's house. And that's not always the truth. So we want to actually begin to share information in a way that people can begin to look at themselves. Okay, and this is called deprogramming violence, and that violence starts in the womb. How many of us have even thought about what we were going through when we were pregnant with our children? I know a lot of people have beautiful pregnancies, but there's some people that actually struggle during their pregnancies, and then because they're struggling, that water that the child is in is very programmable, right? So they're picking up all of the feelings that's going on with the parent. And then those feelings are ingrained into the memory of the child. And if they're coming out of the womb into their same environment, it's getting more enforced into their system. So we have to deprogram the violence, not just within ourselves, but also within our children. And then 10 ways to take back your sanity. It's just another way of looking at how are you stressing yourself out, and no one is going to stop you from doing that. It's on each one of us to take responsibility. People will drain you until you dry, and then they will come and give you your flowers when you die. Okay, so you don't want to do that. You want to actually make sure that you understand that you are the most important person in your universe. And so is the next person. They're the most important person in their own universe. So we want to support people in gaining their own sovereignty, but first you have to gain it for yourself. And then this is one of my favorites, the Young Ninja Parent Guide. So we have different topics here about affirmation, breathing techniques, and then that whole conversation about death and dying. We actually add a learning aid that they can download. And when they download it, they can actually go through that work with the children. And then it talks about the young ninja death doula explanation, because this is the work that the young ninja's mother, she kind of does that work in an offhanded way, because she goes to the family and help them to deal with all of the burial services and all of that. So these are just topics again that teachers and well, though that's for parents. Let me show you the ones for the teachers. And I love the ones for the teachers because it really does help them have a very interactive classroom when it comes to emotional development. All right. And this is mindfulness resources, right? And here we're looking at different things. I had created I don't know if this will play, if you can hear it, but yeah, I'm just going to play a little bit of it. I believe in my ability to love. I believe in my ability to love. Now, just imagine if that's the way that we teach our children how to learn. I remember my daughter when she was in high school. I got called up to the principal's office because she told the teacher that the teacher said to the classroom, "Okay, I'm getting ready to teach you something new. Now I know it's going to be hard for you to learn." And my daughter said, "Excuse me, why would you say that to us? Why would you start off saying that it's going to be hard for us to learn? Because you're actually telling us that it's going to be hard, and that's going to make it hard." And the teacher was livid. She did not like that my daughter challenged her. And I told my daughter, I said, "Well, maybe you should have pulled her to the side." And she said, "Well, I wanted all the kids to know that she shouldn't have said." But this is how we start off with the programming. You're going to teach a child something, and the first thing that you say is, "I know this is going to be hard." What do you think that creates in the child? It creates a fear of failure immediately. And especially if they're challenged to learn, they're going, "Oh, wow, I know I'm not going to get this." No, you have to actually affirm the child, because the brain, listen, I don't care what you tell the brain to do, it's going to try its best to do it. It's not going to challenge you. It's not going to say no, no, no. It's going to say, "Okay, let me make that happen." All right, so that's one of those. Now, this one is very cool, because the this is what we tell the teachers to actually share with their students, so that they can get their children to be part of the young ninja, right? The whole code of conduct. Can you imagine that? Teaching your children that I am a young ninja, strong and true. So these are some of the things, again, that we want our children to participate in, that's not necessarily shared. And then other things here, we have a coloring books, a coloring series here, so that they can actually color the young ninjas. They just download them. And then we have these are just short videos.
I am strong. I am focused. I remember to breathe. BREATHE.
Yes, so we want to teach our children to breathe. And again, we have the curriculum here for each one of the actual courses or books. So we have a curriculum for the Young Ninja. Breathing is a, you know, breathing is, oh, I know what that is. Yeah. Breathing is a superpower. So what the teacher can do, she can actually pull the breathing is a superpower up and literally work on sharing each step, and it shows step-by-step instructions. It gives the core educational objectives, what to do on day one, and this one is for K through fifth grade. All right, so this is a very good series. So go out there again. It's mommyteachesyoungninja.com. I can tell you may not be able to see the downloads that I'm pulling up, but it really is a way for us to introduce this curriculum into the classroom so that our children have a better opportunity or a better chance, you know, to survive this life. I mean, what's happening right now is very crucial. We're at a very crucial time, and we want to make sure that we're supporting them in getting what they need. Okay, and part of that is us actually, you know, giving them access to it. How many of you wish that you had access to different things like this? Okay, wonderful. So now let us continue the conversation, and let me look and see do we have any more questions. So one of the things that I love about teaching this series is that it really gives me a chance to help parents build a home practice. And again, we talk about how parents are our children's first teachers. So imagine that if a parent have not learned the importance of breathing to center, how can they teach that to their child? So on the website, it's giving the instruction, and now the parent is actually learning along with the child. And this is free. They don't have to pay for this curriculum. We do have a summer program that actually has some other sources for them to use, and I think that's $25, but they can get that on the Master Force Leadership Academy website. But here, if you just go to Mommy Teaches the Young Ninja, you can actually begin to share with your student, with your child, but you get to learn as you go. I ran into one of my, I used to teach Master Force curriculum at the UCW campus in Woodlawn, back in 2008, 2000, 2009, 2010. And I was teaching this, doing meditation sessions. We would go outside and meditate. And that was one of to be in the courtyard with a group of students sitting around you meditating. One of the most beautiful things. And one of the guys, when I would run into them, I ran into a couple of them. One of them said, "You know, Miss Stewart, um, I used the practices that you taught me to heal the pain that was in my back." He said, "And now every time something comes up, I'm able to heal it just based on meditating and visualizing." And I'm sure I said a lot more than that to them on that doing those courses, but imagine that those two things has helped him to have power within his own body. And then I ran into another young man who he wanted to play football, and he couldn't play football or sports because he had asthma. And he said, Miss Stewart, I want you to know that I can play sports, and I've been able to suppress the asthma, and because I start drinking alkaline water and breathing, and I can take deep breaths now. That to me is a huge form of wealth, two people, and I'm sure it's more than that, because when you share something with people, they might not ever get back to telling you thank you, and that's not why we do it. We share because this is our gift and this is what we're giving, and some people will get it and some people will not. But imagine being able to share this with a child, and then them adopting that into their life, ongoingly. That's a beautiful thing. And then inside of the teachers, the mindfulness series, we're giving them the opportunity to manage the stress that's going on. I mean, there's so much stress right now in families. I don't know if people are taking time to sit with their children and discuss what's happening without being angry and giving them solutions, but it's important to do that. And I was thinking, for me, teachers are the most amazing people in the world. One of my most favorite teachers was Miss Bell, and she taught us how to sew. She taught us how to do crafts. She taught us so many beautiful things. And forgive me if you've heard this story before, but it's important because it's a story that kind of shaped who I am. And there are probably other children that have gone through something similar. And if you're not a parent that taps into your child, you want to make sure that you're at least debriefing with them on a regular basis so you can understand what other people are saying to them or about them. But it was at my 20-year class reunion that one of my classmates came up to me and she said, "Did you ever tell Miss Bell that my stepfather put his hands inside of your underwear?" And and I didn't remember saying that. I said, "Well, I probably did. If it happened, I probably did." I said it happened. I probably did tell her that. And she said, "Well, I want you to know something." She said, when she actually came and told me that, she told me that you said that. She said, and I'm a teacher now, and I would never have told a child that another child said that. She said, and I made up that you were a liar. She said, and I told all of our friends that you were a liar. And so I know that you quit going to the show with us because we wouldn't let you play with us. So this started in third grade, and I went to school with this person all the way from third grade through middle school through high school, with them thinking, don't play with her. She's a liar. So that ostracized me. And I thought I was being ostracized because my mother had been put in a mental institution and she would do some pretty astonishing things outside of the house that could be embarrassing. So I was actually ridiculed a lot about that. But she told me, she said, on my prom night, when I was getting dressed, my stepfather came into my room and he grabbed my while I, he grabbed my breast. She said, and I fought him off. She said, I immediately called my grandmother. And I remember her grandmother. I remember her whole family. We spent a lot of time over there. But she said, I called my grandmother, and my grandmother came over and put him out that very night. She said, and I am so sorry that I didn't believe you. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And she said, just forgive me. And now this is 20 years later. I had already had 3 kids, married a couple of times, and I had to sit with that because it was nothing to do with it in the moment. I just looked at how it it created the rest of my relationships with everyone. How I ended up being such a loner, and people, whispering behind my back and me not even knowing what it was about, and then not having anyone really at home to talk about that. I can't stress enough how important it is to talk about things. I wish now that I could go back and with my older children, I was still growing up emotionally and not even aware of my own emotional needs. So I know that I wasn't really aware of theirs. Even though I was present, I can tell that I was not good at communicating. You know, even as gentle and as loving or whatever I thought I was, I still was not teaching them how to deal with anxiety because I wasn't dealing with my own anxiety. It took me years to realize how much pain I had on the inside of me. So, yeah, I'm sharing that story because teachers can actually have a positive and a negative effect on your children. So make sure that you are communicating with them and debriefing, you know, asking them, did anything exciting happen? Did anything weird happen? Did anything special happen? You know, these are ways of getting them to open up and then not judging, you know, so that they're free to say it without feeling shame. We don't want them to feel bad because they said. We want them to know that anything that they share with us, we have the space to hold it. Okay, so that's another reason why we created these books so that the parent can actually breathe with the children. They can not only just teach themselves, but imagine, you know, like Miss Young used to pray with us every morning. You know, then you didn't understand the value of it, but we used to pray in the classroom too back then. So who's praying with their child? Are you praying with them? Are you meditating? What spiritual gifts, what spiritual aspects, what anything spiritual, what are you giving to your child spiritually that they know that they can tap in and be protected and provided for by a God that loves us? Because right now, the message that's being given to our children is you don't matter and we don't want you here. And that is not the truth. We are here to change the world. The whole reason that all of the things that are happening right now is so that we can understand where our inner strength is. Now, I think I remember mentioning that when we started Master Force, we started in my living room when my oldest son was 10, and a group of him and his friends would come and we would meditate once a week. But before we would start meditating, I would ask them, what happened this week? Tell me something that you're struggling with this week. And then, you know, whoever would speak up, we would then take that into our meditation. We do a discussion around it and we would meditate on it. And they would leave feeling so much more empowered to go through the rest of the week until they come back the next week. Now, you know, when those children got older, you know, they realized, oh, wow, this is something that I need to be able to teach my children. And a couple of them came to me, Ruben Stewart in particular, and said, Miss Stewart, you need to teach, you need to create a school. You know, we want to be able to share this. So when I tell you that I listen to the young people, I listen to the young people. My son, my oldest son, my daughter, my youngest son, every aspect of them have given me something of myself to develop. I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't me listening to my children. And I tell people all the time that our children really are our master teachers, but we have to be willing to learn. And we think that master means that they're over us. No, what it means is that they have information. They were with the creator last. They looked down on our life and they saw what they could bring to us. And so they came into us so that they could share certain aspects of themselves that would make us remember who we are. So that's one of the ways that we teach too. We teach a course called Creative Parenting at Master Force to help parents to understand that children are more than just little people that we need to control and tell what to do. They're here to remind us that we have a mission. And they have a mission too that's different from us. So we don't have to worry about them getting their mission. We want to make sure that we're continuing on ours. So as we end this series, today's episode, I want to invite parents and educators to look at the Mommy Teaches the Young Ninja series and really see how you can incorporate that into your lifestyle, into your daily existence. And even if you don't use this curriculum, really start taking time to see how your family is moving forward. Take time to have a family meeting and talk about the energy that's going on in the world and create a fortress, a spiritual fortress around your children, not to control, but to empower, uplift, and protect them so that they don't feel so hurt. I mean, what's happening right now can be very hurting for people. And we have some very sensitive souls. And most people don't realize that our sons are probably a lot more sensitive than our daughters. And we tend to try to make them be hard, but we want to allow them to feel what they're feeling, but we want to give them a space to feel safe and protected as they're doing that. So thank you for listening. You can purchase these books at books.by on Masterforce Press. Again, that discount code is WEFFLOW, and it take you $5 off. And then you can visit the website at mommyteachesyoungninja.com. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week. All right. Thank you.
We've come to the end of our show today. If you missed any broadcasts, go to our website for the audio and video archives at www.thefemalesolution.com. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to thank all of you who participated in today's discussions. And to our global family joining us from all around the world, we say thank you. To our family in China, xie xie. India, dhanyavad. Japan, arigato. Korea, kamsamnida. Russia, spasiba. Germany, danke. Poland, dziękuję. France, merci. Spain, gracias. Italy, grazie. Egypt, shukran. Ghana, madasi. Nigeria, eshe. South Africa, ngiyabonga. Senegal, jaref. Kenya, asante. Israel, toda. Pakistan, shukriya. Afghanistan, tashakur. Saudi Arabia and Palestine, shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you, and may peace be upon you and the mercy of God and God's blessings.